Welcome to another episode of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, your home for the latest news and analysis from the world of college hoops. Back again are your hosts, Josh Burton, Phil Dexter, and Peyton Burton.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Everything College Basketball Podcast, episode 125, and it is a big one today, fellas. I'm, of course, your host, Josh Burton. Joining me yet again today are a pair of my teammates, Mr. Peyton Burton, Mr. Phil Dexter. Fellas, we are in for a big one today.
Yes, sir. A lot of stuff's happened this week. Another week of another number one team getting knocked off. Should have a new number one coming in tomorrow on Monday when the AP poll drops. But it's been a crazy week, and I can't wait to get into this episode. Phil, how you doing, bro?
Doing great, man. Was at the Duke game last night. Got to see a good one. And then, yeah, like you guys said, we had a great past week in college basketball. And then this upcoming week, we have some unbelievable games. So excited to get into it.
Yeah, and we have a big one. And as always, fellas, this podcast is presented by the House Enterprise and in part with the House of College Hoops. Head over to our website, house-enterprise.com for more information. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention, as always, our title sponsor for Everything College Basketball this year is Beauty to Beast Nutrition, located in downtown Edinburgh, Indiana. It's a healthy juice bar. It's got all your skinny shot teas, your protein coffees, everything under the sun that's good for you and healthy. Stop in and tell the owner, Natasha, that ECB sent you for 10% off your entire purchase. We are all live on the YouTube and the Twitter, as always, and we promoted it last week. Today, at the top of the show here in just a minute, we'll be joined by the head coach of the Bellarmine Knights, head coach Scotty Davenport. Cannot wait to get into that. But real quick, I do want to bring something up that's very interesting, I thought. We talked about them last year when they blew up. I don't remember the D1 school they played, but they scored a ton of points. But this last week, D3 college, Grinnell College out of Iowa, scores 124 points, going 40 of 111 from three-point land. They did not take a single shot inside the three-point arc. They 40 of 111 from three. Fellas, what kind of video game stuff is this?
Yeah, when I seen that stat, I thought for sure that was like someone was playing a video game. I didn't think that was real. 110 three-pointers. My God, you can tell the game has changed and how the three-point line has been implemented in today's game. You think Nate Oates was watching that game? You think he learned some pointers watching that game? Because my God, that was ridiculous. 110 threes?
111.
My Lord. 111, excuse me.
It's what I love about college hoops, though, in comparison to the NBA. You get all these different clashes of styles and just different things that you see all throughout the different levels of the sport. And, we're going to talk about that with Scott here coming up in just a second. So, yeah, super excited to obviously talk with him, but very interesting to see a strategy with a team throwing up 110 threes in one game. Not sure you'll see that at the D1 level, but definitely, like I said, what I love about the college game.
It's unbelievable. And you mentioned it, fellas. He's waiting in the lobby. Let's go ahead and bring him on now. We are now joined on the Everything College Basketball episode 125 podcast by the head coach of the Bellarmine Knights. He's won a Division II title. He's helped move them up to Division I, and they are the reigning Atlantic Sun Conference champions, although they didn't get to play in the NCAA tournament, which we will talk about. Joining us now is the head coach, Scott Davenport. Coach, how are we doing today?
Good morning. Doing tremendous. Doing great.
Hey, I don't know if you were able to hear us right before you came on. We were talking about Grinnell College out of Iowa, the D3 school. 111 threes. Now, as a head coach, you've been a coach for a long time. When you see a team just pull the three like that, what goes through your mind? And would you ever let one of your teams do that?
No, my head explodes. And I've tried to, I don't know, in this day and age, it's impossible, but I don't want our players to see that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I don't want them to even get that thought in their head.
So I don't know if you've seen the rules. They've came out. I forget their head coach's name, but basically he's got a set of rules for them. It's got to be the quick three is the best three. No layups. On defense, it's better to give up a layup than get a shot clock violation because you want to get the ball back. Basically, they just want to play video game style, and they put up ridiculous numbers, but I couldn't imagine just giving up layups just to get the ball back.
No, In all seriousness, though, the first lesson in coaching at any level is there's more than one way to be successful. And they're proof to that. I mean, total proof to that. There's different ways to be successful. You have to be who you are. I cannot be Coach Pitino. I cannot be Coach Crum. You have to be who you are. And it's, yeah, I saw it. And I think it made my arm hurt thinking about taking it.
Well, their leading scorer that game too, and here's the other rule too. I think they've got 19 kids on the roster. They play all 19. Their whole philosophy is get up and down, keep constant rotation, wear the team down. Their leading scorer that game played 13 minutes, goes 12 of 24 from three. How do you get 24 shots up in 13 minutes?
No, that's you could play. It sounds like you're playing with an 8-second shot clock.
Yeah. I mean, unbelievable. Peyton and Phil, I've kind of tucked up the beginning part here. I'll let you guys take over here.
Yeah, I'll take the first question here. You kind of just mentioned it. You mentioned Denny Crum, you mentioned Rick Pitino, two Louisville legends, and I know right now I got my Kansas gear on. I'm a Kansas fan, but I'm also a diehard Louisville fan, have been since 2009 when Earl Clark, Samedo Samuels, Kyle Kirk, all those other guys down there, so I'm a huge Louisville fan. You guys have the privilege of playing in the Freedom Hall. What's it like to be able to play in such a legendary arena?
Well, it's truly an iconic facility. We were talking prior to the show. There's been more national championships, Division I national championships in Freedom Hall than any facility in history. There's been cities with more, but for example, Indianapolis had Market Square, had the RCA Dome, had Lucas Oil, but Freedom Hall's hosted 6. From Coach Wooden to Kareem Jabbar. Then it was Lou Alcindor. You go on and on and on. Oscar Robertson, the greats. Muhammad Ali's first professional victory bout was in Freedom Hall. 4 presidents. Any musician you want to name, from Elvis to the Rolling Stones to Elton John to Billy. I mean, just anybody. And I'm really proud and I'm thrilled. The state of Kentucky's, we're in the middle of a $220 million renovation that is being done. It was done prior to this season and will be completed next year from the end of our season to the beginning of the fall of 23 to bring it up to speed technology-wise, visually, the ribbon boards. It's incredible. We've had great support from our fans in terms of turning the locker room into Bellarmine. It's not a Louisville, former Louisville locker room anymore. It's ours. Lockers, carpet, the graphics, and that's key in recruiting. And we have boosters in, we have youth teams in, we have you name it, because that's how you grow the game. We need people to be inspired about the game of basketball, not a video game. And we've done that now 18 years. Our locker room's open all the time. Last night, after a tremendous win against a great Murray program, that locker room was incredible. And we're appreciative of those people. The reason? The players love it. And this is all about the players.
Absolutely. Phil, looks like you got something.
Yeah, well, Denny Crum and Rick Pitino have both come up a couple times already, and I'm just curious, how much did working with both of those guys, shape your approach when it comes to coaching? Maybe not from a basketball standpoint, but more of a program building and just how you handle your players.
Phil, that's a tremendous question. This is really it's a great answer. They think the game should be played the exact same way from a fundamental standpoint. You dunk the ball with 2 hands or you use the backboard. I mean, they really do. But they teach it 180 degrees different. Coach Crum's a math major, very analytical, very methodical about it, and Coach Pitino's going to go 9,000 miles an hour like somebody's chasing him. But their belief in the way the game should be played from a fundamental standpoint is the same. How it impacted me, I say this with total humility, and I believe it with everything I have, that I'm the luckiest coach who's ever coached. Any sport, any level, from grade school to the NBA, to MLB, to NFL, NHL, you name it. I am the luckiest. And I'm appreciative of that every single day.
Well, Coach, you meant again, Denny Crum. And by the way, we got to send our well wishes to Coach Crum. I think it came out recently. He's not doing as well, so we want to send our well wishes out to Coach Crum and hope for the best there. But you mentioned obviously getting to work alongside Coach Crum, Coach Pitino. Both of them are very charismatic. You watch them in their prime on the sideline, very charismatic. When you are coaching alongside guys like that are not flamboyant, but they're this larger than life personality, especially in the state and the city in which they have resided in. What do you take from that, especially on like the recruiting trail when you're dealing with young players? What do you take from those two personalities?
Well, the first thing you take from it is, in my opinion, the biggest lost art in college sports is the ability to judge talent. And that I learned from the best. And it wasn't just from Coach Crum, Coach Pitino. It was from, Coach Wade Houston, Coach Jerry Jones, Coach Bill Olson, the assistants under Coach Crum. It was from Mick Cronin, Kevin Willard at Louisville. You go on and on and on. The ability to judge talent now, I believe, is very, very overshadowed because there's so much social media impact and ratings and rankings, etc. And, we believe, but the one common thread was you put the players first. You put the players first, and that's what we do. But the challenge is you've got to recruit players who want to become a part of your program. You hear the word culture a lot, and I'm not being argumentative, but we take a different approach. I don't know how to coach culture, but we believe in having a program, which means you have a plan. That plan is academics, athletics, and socially. We have a plan. Then you evaluate talent. You judge the prospect in terms of his future. And the key is you get young people who want to become a part of your program, that they don't want you to become them. Absolutely. There's a big difference. There's a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially at a Bellarmine. And I don't think this is any secret, but Bellarmine's different than Kentucky or a Kansas or a Duke. You're probably honestly recruiting a different style of kid.
No question.
So when you are evaluating talent, you're obviously, I would imagine, looking for kids who are going to be here for the traditional 4 years to grow and develop. Is that kind of what you're looking at? I would imagine.
It is, but we've had 25 players play professionally overseas. Pedro Bradshaw right now is playing for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. Jeremy Kendall's still playing in Australia. Braden Hobbs is in Germany. Chris Dow. You just go on and on and on. But my belief is it should be the same. I don't care if you're at Louisville, if you're at Kentucky or Indiana or Duke. You should still do that with an education. The percentage that's going to make it is so minuscule. And I mentioned the people that's come through this program. We've had, over 25 play professionally, but all except one have done that with a Bellarmine degree in their pocket. Why can't you do both?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
Your goal should be to use the game. We've all heard of young people who, when things don't work out, say the game used them. We can't do that. We can't do that. They should use the game. Think of this, and I'm going to get a little bit real with you guys. So we have 3 freshmen: Pete Suter from Carmel, Michael Bobus from Cleveland, Zach Reeds from Brebeuf up in Indianapolis. Think of this. A normal career in the work world, they're going to work somewhere between the year 2067 and 2070. Think of that.
Yeah, I mean that's real stuff. Though.
That's real.
That's real. It's real. And
that's serious.
And with a basketball career, you could play 15, 20 years and retire if you're fortunate enough.
But why not do both?
Well, no, yeah, you're right. You're right.
What happens to the 28-year-old who's been given a false sense of reality, what the real world's about, and it ends, it stops bouncing? That's on us. That's our fault. Because he's going to work, another 40 years. I tell you, the greatest spokesman in all of college basketball, in my opinion, is Matt Painter. Matt Painter tells it real. Bob Huggins tells it real. Now, before them, it was Coach K, it was Roy Williams, but Matt Painter is as good a spokesman for college basketball. If Matt Painter tomorrow was running college basketball, from coaches, officials, administrators, players, everybody involved, I'd be the happiest guy in the United States.
So we've had a debate, and I'm going to let Peyton and Phil, I know I keep taking up, I just have these follow-ups. We've had a debate here recently, which is funny you say Matt Painter, because I'm on the Coach Painter, or not bandwagon, but the train. We have, in the ECB family, we have a ton of Purdue people. And for years, they're constantly, if they lose a game, well, Painter can't coach, and he can't do this. But when they win, they're like, maybe he's not too bad. And we've tried to tell him for a long time, the guy knows what he's doing. Like, you don't just continually have a successful Big Ten program and a team that's in position to win if you can't coach. And so the fact that someone at your stature is saying Matt Painter is the guy makes me happy. I'm not going to lie.
Well, it's from me, it's totally out of respect. We played them a year ago. When I was at Louisville, we played them. He is everything that's right with the game of college basketball. I mean, his perspective, again, in my opinion, and we can line up people, he is the foundation of what college basketball should be about. And again, for me, it's total respect and admiration and appreciation for what he stands for.
Phil, I know I was going to say, go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, to pivot a little bit to what you guys have been doing this season, you're sitting at 5-6 currently, but you've played the 5th toughest schedule, according to KenPom. As a coach who's experienced, a ton of success throughout your career so far, how do you guys find a balance between wanting those immediate results with wins and losses, but also trusting the process and understanding what you guys are trying to build long term?
Teaching. We could bring in, let's say that we brought in Coach Crump, Coach Pitino, Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Coach Knight, Matt Painter. Let's go on. Gene Cady. Let's go on and on and on. And let's say, okay, we're going to come up with a practice plan today. It would be impossible, in my opinion, to simulate teaching with the greatest brains in college basketball better in a Bellarmine practice than we could get at UCLA, at Duke, at Clemson, at Louisville, at Loyola Marymount,
at Kentucky.
You can't simulate that. And our players deserve, and our staff deserves so much credit because of the belief that this is going to help me. It's hard. Nobody wants to lose. We led Kentucky at every media timeout in the game. Now, there was points where they were ahead, but we came back until the under 12. That was after we had been to Clemson and Duke on a Friday and a Monday. Then Loyola Marymount on a Friday and UCLA on a Sunday, and then Kentucky on a Tuesday. That speaks volumes for these players and their personal pride, their pride in this program, but it also speaks volumes to recruits that we have a plan. Think of our players. Cameron Indoor Stadium on a Monday. UCLA on Sunday. At Rupp Arena on Tuesday.
That's 3 iconic venues right there.
And I know you all are probably aware of, but maybe the listeners are not. 4 schools in the history of college basketball: Louisville, St. John's, Notre Dame, and North Carolina have played in Poly Pavilion, Cameron Indoor Stadium, and Rupp Arena. Only 4. We were the 5th. The closest any of those schools did it was 333 days from December to the following November. 2 seasons. We did it in 9 days.
That's unbelievable, Coach. That is and full disclosure, I'm a Kentucky fan, have been. So I was obviously watching that game. Kurt Hopf was unbelievable in that game, by the way. I mean, he was driving me mad how good he was in that game. Phil, I know you had
what you don't know, he could not practice on Saturday. He played UCLA on Sunday, could not practice on Monday due to a severely bruised sternum right in the middle of his chest.
Well, you wouldn't have known it.
There's nothing you can do. I mean, you breathe, it hurts, you get touched. We had him padded up, and he's going against the consensus college player of the year, who's the most physical guy in years in college basketball, Oscar Tshiebwe. So, credit to Kurt. You're right. But I'll give you a Kurt trivia fact. Who holds the Indiana state championship game, high school game, rebounding record?
Well, it's him because he played at Bar Reeve and they played at, because we're from Indiana. We told you off air. It's him. They played. I forget what it was. It was like 25 or something like that.
No, 23. 19. He had 23 points, 19 rebounds.
Yeah. And those Bar Reeve teams were phenomenal. Phil, I know you had another follow-up question.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to ask, with those UCLA, Duke, and Kentucky games, you mentioned they were over the span of 9 days, but did your guys get a chance to, soak in some of the history of those places, check out the museums and stuff inside?
Well, yes, absolutely. You're touching, Phil, on the teacher and me coming out. As we went into Poly Pavilion, we arrived on Wednesday, and we played Loyola Marymount on Friday. We practiced in the first facility Coach Wooden ever coached in from 1948 to 1965 before they built Poly Pavilion. So I had the players study Coach Wooden. I said, I want you to know where his first job was. I want you to know his background, being raised in Indiana. I want you to know he coached in Dayton, Kentucky. I want you to go through his record run. And then we went through the UCLA, their locker room is exactly, it's a museum. The pyramid success. We did the same thing with Loyola Marymount and Hank Gathers. We did it at Rupp Arena. How many of our players even know who Adolph Rupp is? They should know. They know Coach Calipari came from Memphis to Kentucky. Do they know he was an NBA head coach with New Jersey? They should know. And I'll give you an example. We played an NAI school. We played Alice Lloyd College last Sunday. I'm sorry. And I made our players, where is that? It's in Pippa Passes, Kentucky. They didn't know that. They should learn. You can learn outside of the classroom as well as in a classroom. The same with Freedom Hall. When we made that transition to Freedom Hall 2 years ago, I made them research everything about Freedom Hall. And they should. So this is a part of learning, and I take the teaching aspect very serious.
Coach, I got one more question for you, and I'll let Josh start to wrap this interview up. I want to ask, you got a lot of experience coaching the game, and a big topic surrounding college basketball is NIL. What's your take on NIL?
Good question.
Well, I believe it's great if it leads to a player's future. Like Justin Betts for us already has a master's in business administration, and he's got some NIL opportunities through Argy Financial, but that's going to be his future. He's going to be an employee. He's going to be in the finance world. So I'm all for that if they can use it. But to give them fake money, yes, these players should be given every opportunity to maximize their college experience. I want them to use the sport. I'm fearful that some of them are going to be used by the sport instead of using the sport. So we can do both. We're an example. But we should be teaching fiscal responsibility, about how you manage finances. Not, again, outside of the classroom, the intent was not as a recruiting tool, and that's gone astray. We know that.
Well, as I'm going to say, unfortunately, you can already start to see where we're all in favor of the NIL. We think that if the kids are bringing the fans in the building and they are helping build the revenue for the schools, for everything else, that they should be able to collect some of that.
Sure.
But to your point, we are starting to see where it is leading down a very dark road. I think there needs to be some kind of regulations on it, but I don't know. It's kind of like the Wild West. It's kind of like we wanted it, but now we want to pull it back a little bit. There's got to be like a happy medium there, because it is. I mean, like if you're an Oscar Tshiebwe, obviously he's driving revenue for the University of Kentucky, for all this. People are wearing his jerseys and all this other stuff, right? But he at one point in time, he couldn't collect any money off of that. And it kind of goes back to the Fab Five deal where Chris Webber would say, like, we're packing Chrysler or the Chrysler Arena every night. And we go to the bookstore and we see our jersey with our number clearly on it, and people are buying it off the bookshelves, but we don't get to see a dime out of that. And if somebody wants to buy us a pizza, we're in trouble for that. So
see, I agree 100%. But I also reflect back. You made a great point, Josh. You made a great point. If I was teaching a fifth grade class, the day one of that class, boy, I better be super structured. And I better be on top of it. And everything better be everybody working together. Then that class will move forward. If I come in for 5 days the first week of school and I let those fifth graders just go wild, do anything they want to do, sit wherever you want to sit, get up whenever you want, just do whatever. Then I decide, whoa, I better rein them back in. It's not going to work.
Yeah, it's harder to do.
So, in my opinion, we should have been much more structured. And then as we grew, we could open it up.
I completely agree.
And I think we went the other way. The same with the transfers. We went the other way. Now we're trying to rein everything back in. Oh, you can't use it for recruiting. Oh, you can only go to one school. No, we should have been much more structured. And as we learned through the way, put the players first to where they're learning financial responsibility and how to manage and not get eaten up by taxes, because this is income.
Yeah.
And then we could have worked through it. But I think where we're suffering. I grew up in an era where people in roles of leadership knew college campuses, they knew young people, they knew a locker room, they knew athletics. And I think we've lost that to a degree. And we have people in supervisory roles that are businessmen. They are accountants. They are legal people. You've got to understand young people, a locker room, a college campus, and their future versus just saying, okay, whatever you want to do, go do it. You can't do
Right. Right. I will say one last thing, because Coach, we appreciate your time, and I'm going to let you get out of here. But on the NIL, I do think one thing it is good for college basketball is that in years past, a guy like Oscar Tshiebwe or an Armando Bacot or Trace Jackson Davis probably wouldn't have come back for a senior year. They would have been forced to go to the NBA when they're probably not ready. I do think the one thing the NIL is doing is that these guys can come back almost risk-free to get their degree, to stay another year in college and mature for the NBA, and make a little money on the side as well. And I think that is better for the game of college basketball, because if you can bring guys like that back for another year, I don't think that's a bad thing.
You know what, though, Josh?
What's up?
Sincerely, they don't have to go to college.
Well,
No, they don't have to go. Right?
that's true.
They don't have to go.
That's true.
They can go to the G League. They can go to Europe.
Dang, Coach, I'm out here trying to promote college basketball, and you're giving me counterpoints.
Now the NBA. College
No,
basketball.
I know.
Right?
No, you're right. You're absolutely right.
How many? Let me ask you a pop quiz, Josh. How many college athletes in NCAA Division 1, 2, and 3, men and women? How many? Pop quiz.
I don't know.
Right.
50,000. I don't know.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Over 460,000.
Oh, that's crazy.
So what are we talking about here? We're talking about a minuscule number, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking at a big picture.
It's a good point. And
I know a locker room. You know, I know a college campus. You know, I know young people. And you go 0 to Oscar Tshiebwe. I agree 100%. But how many of those are there?
Well, there's one.
That's
one.
right.
There's one.
We played them. I can tell you one.
Yeah. And you know what? I appreciate that point of view because you're coming at it as a person who's in the trenches with
Yes.
these kids. And I'm coming at it from a point of view of a guy who covers college basketball that sees these stars, quote unquote, come back and like, oh, this is a good thing. So I love the differing opinions and I appreciate that. Coach,
It's the best game. It's the
Oh,
best game in the country.
there's nothing better than college basketball. We will
Because
die on
it
that hill.
very seldom, if ever, are the 5 best players the best team.
Right?
It's a true team game. It's not where we've got a special package in football for a defensive play or a short reliever in baseball, or it's a true team game.
Completely.
And that's what the beauty of this game. And it is, it should be entertaining. It's a great game.
Completely agree.
And that's important to me. That's really important to me.
Coach, we appreciate your time. We had some fan questions on our Facebook group. If you've got time to rapid fire, there's only a couple of them. If you've got time to
Let's
fire
fire away.
Right on. We will start with one of our content creators here on the site, Johnny Stroud. He wants to know, which team would you love to go into their house and knock them off? Any team in the country. You get to pick one building. We've talked about Rupp. We've talked about Pauley. We've talked about Hammond and Door. You get to pick one team that you would love to go into their house and knock them off.
Well, I'm going to say Louisville, Kentucky, and Indiana, all three, and Purdue, because the wealth of knowledge the fan bases have. I would say this area, Louisville, Kentucky, Indiana, Duke, because the knowledge of the fans.
Love it.
From the student standpoint, Duke.
There you go. Phil, you was at that game, weren't you? The Bellarmine game.
Yes, I was, and I can totally understand why he says that with the fan. The fan base in Cameron can be a little much sometimes. That's what I'll say.
Oh, they're the best. They're the best. Them and Gonzaga are the best. They're the best.
There's no more passionate fan base, I don't think. That's for sure.
No, they're the best. Everything's choreographed. Everything.
Coach, Riley Palmer wants me to ask you if there are any talks on changing the tournament eligibility rules, especially since other coaches are calling for it too, which brings us to a great point. After you played Kentucky, I know you were moved by Coach Cal coming out in your guys' defense. We think the rule is complete BS. It shouldn't take this long to transition from D2 to D1 to be eligible for the tournament. You guys were the ASUN tournament champs. You should have been eligible to go to at least the NIT. At the very least, the NIT, and you got screwed out of that. So kind of your thoughts on that. And do you see it changing anytime soon?
Well, there's a side that says, oh, well, you knew what you were signing up for. And it said 4 years. That's correct. 11 years ago, we looked into it. The cost of making the transition has almost tripled since then. It's more than tripled. I'm sorry, I misspoke. So the universities are paying the way. Number one. Number two, I'm not going to quit fighting for these players. You all don't know me as well, but if there was 3.5 minutes to go in a game, we're down 4, and we quit, can you imagine what that locker room would be like? I would go crazy. So I'm not going to quit on them. I won't ever let them quit on us. So I'm not going to quit on them. I'm going to fight for them. Now, just this last week, the NCAA granted every senior at Virginia football another year of eligibility because of the tragedy with the 3 deaths in their career. They should. They've changed the transfer rules. There's a player in this very community. There's been players at Louisville. There's players in this community who've played in 3 colleges in 3 years. They've never missed a possession. Why not my guys?
It's true.
Now, what I question, I have begged the NCAA to come look my players in the eye and explain to them, because I look them in the eye every day. And I go back to what my point was. If we got people in leadership positions that know a locker room, a college campus, and young people, this rule would be changed. They can do anything they want. They just did it last week for Virginia. I've got cited cases where emergency legislation has been enacted. What do you think how do you think Justin Betts, Garrett Tipton. Two players, one has his master's degree, the other one is will have it this spring. How do you think they feel mentally, knowing they're 2 games from starting a conference season? Do you think it affects them mentally that they're not then qualifying for the automatic qualifier? We're the only school in the history of college basketball to do it.
Yeah, and
We did it last spring. So do you think they're mentally affected by this rule? Yes or no? They are.
They have to be. They have to be.
Well, why don't we worry about them?
Well, listen, we've got on here for 5 years now and lambasted the NCAA for inaccurate and slow decision making and illogical decision making. So if we could tell you what they're thinking, then we would be a rich bunch of people. But
I just wish they were consistent.
Well, that's what we've begged for years.
You brought up NIL. Who was that for?
It's supposed to be for the players, yeah.
The transfer portal was for who? The players. This has nothing to do with Scott Davenport. This has to do with our players. That's all. Do it for them.
Well, we're 100% behind you because we thought last year that you guys should have been eligible for the tournament. You're the ASUN tournament champions. By rule and definition, you win the conference tournament, you become the automatic qualifier. It doesn't matter. This whole rule, I'm going to get fired up. I'm just going to get fired up. So, Coach, we're with you. We're absolutely with you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, guys.
Hey,
Thank you.
This isn't as much of a question as a comment. Friend of the show, he votes in our ECB Top 25 weekly poll. The former head of officiating for the NCAA, John Adams, he said, hell of a coach, Louisville should have hired him. So I don't know if a little shout out to John Adams there, and you might have.
Former GLVC officials coordinator, that's how he launched his career. John Adams is everything right with college basketball. He speaks the truth.
He does. We had him on in the summer. Became good friends with him. Like I said, he's a voter in our top 25 weekly poll. We love John.
His son does a great job coaching. We need more John Adams, not less.
We got 2 more for you, Coach. I know we're taking a lot of your time, which we appreciate. Brad Eckenroth says, which team do you find yourself going against on the recruiting trail? He was curious if it's a team like Northern Kentucky, if kind of the similar ilk, you find yourself battling with them more often than not.
No, it's regionally. It's the MAC schools, the OVC schools, the ASUN schools. It's kind of regionally like that. That's a great question. It can be Horizon schools, just more geographic than it would be specific. But, the league's similar to ours.
And then last question, Jordan Bowman. We talked about this off air, but I'll let you answer it on there. He goes, why does he love the Indiana kids so much? I believe there's 9 on the roster without looking. And we mentioned it off air. You've got the second most Indiana kids on a roster right behind Purdue in the nation. So what is it about the state of Indiana that you love that me and Peyton love so much as well?
They come with phenomenal poise because they've played on such tremendous grand stages. When you look at the facilities throughout, from Southern Indiana all the way to Fort Wayne to Crown Point to Indianapolis to everywhere, they play with an incredible following in front of rabid fan bases. So their poise is at such a high level. But the number one reason is their love for the game.
Well, Coach, in 49 other states, it's just basketball. But in Indiana, it's more than that, and you know that. Coach, I know we've taken up more of your time than probably we anticipated, but we just kept rolling with the punches. We cannot thank you enough for hopping on today, and you will have an invite at any point throughout the year if we can get you back on. And we told you off air, Peyton and I got our credentials. We will be there December 29th for your Clash Against Liberty. Cannot wait to see your team in action. And like we said, to see Darius McGee from Liberty. It'll be a fun time in Freedom Hall. Coach, is there anything? I know you guys got games coming up.
I'm going to give you a Liberty.
Hit the winter break.
I'm going to give you a Liberty little tease, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Be courtside prior to the introductions, because it may be the greatest national anthem you'll see all year. That's all I'm going to say.
Oh, Coach, are you singing it? Are you singing the national anthem?
I couldn't carry a tune of it at handles. No, it may be the most special national anthem you'll see all year. I'm giving you a little tease.
Well,
And this is just the micromanaged part of me coming out and doing a little bit of everything. But I've got a lot. It's going to be fun. It's going to be special.
Well, we'll leave it on that, Coach. We can't wait to see you in person December 29th for the Liberty game. Again, from all of us, we thank you for your time. And again, hopefully, I know the season's busy, but hopefully we can get you back on throughout the year and chat you up some more. Coach, you've been phenomenal, and we thank you for your time. Seriously.
Everybody stay healthy, stay safe, have a great holiday, and embrace and enjoy those families and this game we all love so much. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
You,
See you, Coach. Ladies and gentlemen, what a phenomenal interview that was with Coach Davenport. Phil, I don't know about you. I swear to God, I could talk to him for 3 hours.
Well, I think Phil's so excited that he had to go use the bathroom, so I'll just go ahead and step in for him. Is the episode done? I feel like we can end the episode just right now and not talk about anything else that's happened throughout the week, because that was just incredible. I mean, he's just a wealth of knowledge. So much. He's an experienced coach. You heard his takes on NIL. You heard his takes on the transfer portal and everything else. I mean, he's a brilliant mind. The fact that he's got to coach under or be under the influence of Denny Crum and Rick Pitino. I mean, obviously those two guys are special to the Louisville program, special to me. So, very cool interview, and I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we all did.
Phenomenal. Peyton, what we're going to do here, since Phil went to the bathroom, we're going to run our one and only commercial breaks here instead of later in the show, and then we'll come back. We got some big games to review, preview. We've still got more left in this episode 125, so stay tuned as you're listening to Everything College Basketball, episode 125. Peyton, SeatGeek it up. What's going on, everybody? This is Josh here, and I'm here to let you know that we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they are here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off of your first purchase.
What's going on, everybody? This is Will Tondo, the co-founder of House Enterprise, and I'm happy to announce that the Everything College Basketball podcast is now part of the House of College Hoops Network. We're really excited to bring you some premier college basketball content this season, so check out the website www.house-enterprise.com for all of our content creators, all of our college hoop stuff, and we're excited to get this season rolling. What's going on, everybody?
What's going on, everybody? This is Conrad here from Everything Pro Wrestling, here to let you know that Everything Pro Wrestling is a show by the fans, for the fans. Every Monday, we are live at 6:05 Eastern Standard Time with Clash of the Podcast, where you can listen to myself and my tag team partner, Sean Hubbard of Hubbard Wrestling Weekly, talk all the latest and greatest in pro wrestling. You might even find an old school topic or two as well mixed in. And every Wednesday, we go live on YouTube once again with AEW Dynamite post-show coverage. So at 10:05, head on over to the Everything Pro Wrestling channel and talk what we just saw on Dynamite with us. And did I mention that we are on all available audio platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and many more. Thank you so much for listening to me, and let's get back to everything college basketball.
Well, thank you very much for that. Our good friend Conrad Cushman. He's got you covered. Ring of Honor just had a pay-per-view yesterday afternoon. I don't know if anybody watched it, but go check out Conrad and Everything Pro Wrestling for all the latest and greatest coverage. Check out our website, house-enterprise.com, and just check out all of our friends and sponsors. Phil, I think Peyton said you'd take a bathroom break. That's why we went to commercial break. But before we went to commercial, we were just talking. Coach Davenport was phenomenal. Just with his time, his passion, I could listen to that man talk for hours.
Yeah. Well, he certainly has passion not only for basketball, but particularly for college basketball. And you could hear that when he was talking about the NIL, but when he was talking about, his team not being eligible for the NCAA tournament, I think that was a pretty poignant moment. And we feel for him and his guys. There's no reason for them to not be eligible. Like he said, I would like the NCAA to put forward any good reason that they have for not allowing these teams to be eligible. And it's the players that suffer, and it sucks. But yeah, the interview overall was phenomenal. Scotty was great with his time, and just look forward to you guys making it out to the game and sort of getting some of that access to the program. and just seeing how they do throughout the rest of the year.
I don't know about you guys. I mean, obviously, I'm excited to go to that game December 29th, but after spending about 35 minutes with him, I feel like Coach Davenport's a friend now. He made you feel like a friend, did he not?
He definitely did. I feel like we're buddies now.
I mean, that's probably what makes him a great recruiter. Shows up in that living room and you feel like you know him after a few minutes.
Speaking of knowing, though, what I do know is that last week college basketball, we had the number 1 and number 2 teams lose this week. Let's go ahead and start with number 1. Alabama goes into Houston and Roll Tide the Houston Cougars for Houston's first loss of the season. Thoughts on this game, Phil? I know you didn't get check most of it out because you were at the Duke game, but I don't think it's a huge upset. I know some people are trying to say this is some kind of big upset, but Alabama's already proven over the years that they can beat the number 1 team in the country. They just did it earlier this year, despite what you think in North Carolina. But they go into a hostile environment. They're down, I think, as much as 17 at one point. Rally their way back to victory. Thoughts on this Alabama win against Houston? It looks like Nate Oates might have another team that contends for the SEC like we all thought. And how freaking good is Brandon Miller?
Well, that's who I was going to bring up is, like you said, I didn't get to see a ton of this one, but I think what separates this Alabama team from the teams that Nate Oates has had the past few years is having a guy like Brandon Miller, having that one absolute stud that you can lean on. But I still trust Houston as one of the best teams in the country. I know a lot of people are jumping on Houston now, being like, see, they don't, they play in a terrible conference. They shouldn't have been number 1, They lost, a really close game. Marcus Sasser's banged up. I just don't think that they deserve some of the hate they're getting.
Well, here's the thing, too. We've known Nate Oates' Alabama teams to stroke the three. Peyton joked about Grinnell College and all that, but they only went 7 of 23 from 3, and they were down as much as they were down 15. I'm sorry. They were down 44-29 was the largest Houston lead, and they clawed their way back. Noah Clowney, the freshman, 6'10 freshman, wins KenPom MVP of the game, 16 points. Brandon Miller, if you only looked at the stat line, 8 points, 5 rebounds, but he was so crucial down the stretch, getting big rebounds, getting to the rim, creating plays. Jaden Bradley off the bench with 12 points. It was the freshman for Alabama who carried this team to the win. Noah Clowney, Brandon Miller, Jaden Bradley. This Alabama team's impressive as hell.
They're really impressive, and the fact that Brandon Miller did not hit a single shot, all of his points came from free throws. He had 8 points. He was 0 of 8 from the field, 0 of 5 from the three-point line, 8 of 9 from the free throws. So the fact that they still won this game by 6, and their best player didn't play well, didn't even hit a single shot, says a lot about this Alabama squad. And Phil, I'm glad you mentioned Sasser being banged up, because that's what I was talking about last week when we was previewing this game, is will Sasser be healthy? Is his shoulder okay? Can it live up? Because the game prior to this one, he went out with like the final 2 minutes to go with a shoulder injury. And I think that was a big question, and it definitely came into fruition to this game. He only had 9 points, 2-11 from the field, 3 personal fouls. He had a couple turnovers. He was not the best player on the floor, and I thought he would be.
Phil, let me ask you this from a Houston perspective. You're up 15 in the second half. As the 44-29 lead was at 16-28 left to go in the game. You're up 15. That's when you probably should have closed out. So thoughts on Houston blowing the big lead like this? Phil, you got your mic muted, I think. Peyton, I'll ask you then. Look like Phil. It looked like Phil had to step away. I'll ask you thoughts on Houston blowing the big lead.
I think Jamal Shead had a great game for the most part. I mean, 8 of 20 from the field. That's not really too effective efficiency-wise, but he had 19 points. I think he was definitely their best player. In the first half, he played great. Second half, though, he didn't really play his best, and especially when they was making a run. He had a couple costly turnovers towards the end of the game that pretty much gave Alabama the lead. I think the last lead Houston had was 62-60 with like under 5 minutes to go. But yeah, that's a game they should have won. I mean, they was up 15 points at one point, and they're the number one team in the country. That's a game, even when your best player is not playing well, it's a game that you should finish, and they just ultimately did not.
Well, speaking of a game that should have been finished, we go back to Tuesday night in Madison Square Garden, the Jimmy V Classic. Number 2, Texas takes a loss, their first of the year, to number 18. Oh, I'm sorry, not number 18. To number 16, Illinois in the ECB Top 25. 85-78 in overtime. Peyton, thoughts on this? Because Texas looked like they were in control there for a while.
Yeah, it looked like, I mean, they had a 10-point lead at one point with like under 9 minutes to go. They were up 56-46, and then Illinois started hitting some shots. And I told y'all last week when I predicted this game, Matthew Mayer, this was going to be his coming out party, and it, boy, oh boy, did it ever. 21 points, 8 of 10 from the field, 5 of 5 from the three-point line. I said, in a game like this, if you want to upset a talented, very good Texas squad, he's going to have to hit some shots, and he went perfect from the three-point line. Incredible game for him.
He was unbelievable that first half. And I think he did most of his scoring that first half. And you could tell he was feeling himself because a couple of them, he isolated one-on-one on the wing and did a little dribble dance, step back, bah, bottom of the net. As our good friend, not really a good friend, but
Bill Raftery.
Bill Raftery, thank you. Onions, baby.
Onions.
I mean, Mayer was tremendous. And TJ Shannon was terrible the whole game. But late in the second half, to get it to overtime, and in the overtime period, he was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I think it shows the talent of a kid like that. He could be quiet for 38 minutes and then just turn it on in a blink of an eye.
Well, in the overtime period, Illinois only scored 17 points, and he had 12 of them. So he was definitely the player that they needed him to be in this overtime period to get them the upset win. But going to Texas-wise, Marcus Carr did not play well. I mean, 9 points. He was 3 of 14 from the field, 0 of 5 from the three-point line. He had 4 fouls. He was in foul trouble, a couple turnovers. He did not play his best. Timmy Allen and Tyrese Hunter was the only guys for Texas to score in double figures.
Well, and this is a game, too. I know it kind of picked up late, but for the majority of this game, neither team shot the ball well at all. I know Illinois ended up going 10 of 23 from 3, Texas 7 of 22. Both shot around 47% from the field, but neither team particularly could put the ball in the bucket there for large stretches of the game, it felt like. And the fact that Illinois was able to pull this out, I think this is a big win. And how good has Jaden Epps been off the bench, the freshman for Illinois? 11 points in this game, but his contributions on the floor, I think they're a better team when he's playing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you mentioned 11 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists as well. So he's not only getting points, he's dropping dimes, and he's helping off the glass as well. We mentioned Texas probably having one of the best backcourts in the country. I think Illinois' backcourt was definitely better in this game. And I think the front court was a lot better in this game. I mentioned Timmy Allen. He was one of the only players that really played well for Texas. Illinois, they could not stop Dane Deja. He had 9 points. He only had 9 points, but he had 6 boards. He was in foul trouble as well. But Illinois had 38 points in the paint compared to Texas 28. I think that was a difference maker in this game, especially in the overtime period.
Phil, it looks like you're back. We are talking about your boys' big win against Texas on Tuesday night. Kind of your thoughts on that game.
Nice to see Matt Mayer's shot come around, 5 for 5 from 3. A big scoring game, but TJ Shannon was not good in this game until overtime. Had 12 of his 16 in the overtime period. I caught the end where you guys were mentioning Jaden Epps. He's been fantastic throughout the season. I knew he was going to be a really electric scorer coming off the bench, but he's an even better shooter than I expected him to be. He's shooting 39% from 3, just 1 for 2 in this game, but has really been electric shooting the ball. And I don't think he's a guy we have to be worried about being a one and done or anything like that. So as long as we can keep him around with that transfer portal, I think, a year or two down the road, he's an absolute, maybe like 18, 20 point a game scorer and a stud.
Well, I mentioned it, and I feel like when he's on the floor, they're a better team. Do you agree with that?
I do. There's just, like I said, electric is how I always describe his play. I was telling you guys about him last year because he was playing at high school in Charlotte, and he played here in Raleigh a couple times. I was able to catch him, and the kid is just electric. He's like that microwave type of scorer. He just brings that energy off the bench. And yeah, I do think they're better. I think they're a better team when him and Sincere Harris are on the floor, oddly enough. Those two guys seem to have an energy that maybe a couple of the veteran guys aren't bringing. I've been a little disappointed with RJ Melendez. Was expecting him to have a bigger impact so far this year. He had a pretty good game, but yeah, I think both the freshmen, the team's better with.
Well, let's move on to another Big Ten team that played last night in Las Vegas on Fox in prime time. I mean, you could tell it's prime time because they had Gus Johnson and our boy Bill Raftery on the call out in Vegas. And just the atmosphere. It was packed. I'm talking packed with Arizona and Indiana fans. It was loud. It was rowdy. This felt like a Final Four NCAA tournament atmosphere. And how freaking good is Arizona? Forget the loss to Utah. Forget that. I'm telling you right now, they are a team that can win the NCAA title this year.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Kerr Kriisa, 14 points. Pelle Larsson, 16. Omar Ballo, 15. Azuolas Tubelis, the MVP on KenPom in this game, 21 points. They got contributions from Adama Ball in the second half, hitting 3 threes. Every time Indiana would make a run to get this game within 3 or 5 points, Arizona countered with a 7-0 run, an 8-1 run, and stretched the game. They were comfortably in the lead this whole game, even though it felt entertaining and close. Arizona wins 89-75. We'll talk about Indiana in just a second, but I want to hear from both of you. Your thoughts on Arizona on this performance, and as we look ahead, because I'm telling you, this Arizona team looks built to win the title.
Does Arizona have the best front court in the country?
I think so, right? At least right now.
I think probably without a doubt.
Yeah, I think it's without a doubt 100%. They got the best front court in the country. Ballo looks like a complete different player. Like, he's just a different beast. Indiana, I mean, they got completely outplayed on the front court. You mentioned Ballo. I mean, he had 15 and 12. I know Tubelis won the MVP, but there's an argument to be made that without Ballo, they don't win this game. He had 15 points, 12 rebounds, 6 of the 9 from the field, a couple of steals as well for the center. That's impressive. But completely took TJD completely out of this game, and I agree. Arizona, and I knew they would. I said last week, they're not going to shoot as poorly as they did against Utah when they shot like 14% from 3. I think they shot over like 40% in this game.
Both teams, how about this, Phil? Both teams go 10 of 25 from 3. Both teams. 10 of 25.
Well, and Peyton, you mentioned or brought up, do they have the best front court in the country? They probably have a top 10 backcourt in the country too, between Kerr Kriisa and Courtney Ramey. I mean, I don't know that there's too many backcourts I take ahead of them. But just another huge win for them. And we keep seeing, that front court. Tubelis, like you mentioned, was the MVP. I picked him in my bank on it to outscore TJD. Have to toot my own horn there a little bit. Finally got on the board with the bank on it. I think that this was a really bad matchup for Indiana as well. I think teams that are going to try to speed it up and play a really, just offensive style of basketball are going to bring up some of the flaws in Indiana. And you always mention it, Josh. TJD just needs to get a jumper. I mean, He needs to add some element of his game for when these physical matchups happen, because Omar Ballo was able to completely take him out of this game.
Yeah, and they didn't have to double in the post like other teams, like Rutgers tried and other teams tried. They just manned up straight up, helmet on helmet, if they use a football term. And Arizona, every time Indiana would make a run. Arizona started this game. They went on a huge 17-0 run to start this game, basically, and gapped the lead. They're up 29-12 after the first 10 minutes of the game. And Indiana, to their credit, fought back, but Arizona is just too tough. You cannot put yourself in a hole. And we always called out, officiating did go against Indiana in this game. Arizona shot 25 free throws to Indiana's 9. And you could always say the counterpoint, Arizona is the more aggressive team. Arizona shot a lot of jump shots in this game. So it's not like they got to the rim, Ballo on the putbacks and lobs to the rim, but there were some bad calls that went against Indiana's way, especially late in the stretch.
Especially that goaltending.
The goaltending call changed everything. Indiana was rallying. I think they had got it down to 4 or 5 points, and that bucket would have been huge in the momentum to keep it. And then they don't call the goaltending. Arizona comes down, buries a 3, and it killed the momentum. So Indiana was on the unfavorable side of some calls late, but that didn't ultimately, that did not beat them. Arizona is just too talented. They've got guys that can shoot. They've got bigs inside. They run the floor. If you want to slow them down, they run beautiful offense. Tommy Lloyd for years has been known as probably the best offensive minded basketball coach. We've seen it in his year and a half so far at Arizona. We've seen it in his tenure at Gonzaga as an assistant coach. Their offense is just a thing of beauty. And when you get contributions like a guy like Adama Ball going 3 of 3, all in the second half, timely threes, and Indiana was without, again, Jalen Hood-Schifino. Would he have made that big of a difference? Who knows? But on the Indiana perspective, you got to feel good that, your team continued to fight. This team will not go down without a fight. And you got to be happy with that if you're a Hoosier fan. Miller Kopp continues his hot shooting, 4 threes, 14 points. Race Thompson finally has a breakout game. They were not playing him. Omar Ballo, if I could speak, basically sagged off and played a one-man zone. So Thompson had to shoot the 3, missed the first couple, second half started really picking it up. He goes for 16 points, hits 4 threes, best game all year. Tamar Bates, 13 points off the bench. I think if you're an IU fan, you're disappointed that you lost this game. But you also got to be optimistic because you never quit. You went toe-to-toe with one of the best teams in the country. And I think if you get healthy, fix some of these holes, I think Indiana is exactly who we thought they are. And they're going to be a team that can be a second weekend, maybe a Final Four team.
I'm glad you mentioned Tamar Bates because that's exactly what I was going to bring up because I thought he played very well. Like, he was very impressive. He got 29 minutes in this game, especially without Hood-Schifino playing in this game. They needed someone to step up on the bench, and he was definitely the player. He mentioned he had 13 points, 6 of 10 from the field. I think he was extremely important in their search to come back into that game, cutting it to the deficit at one point to 3 points. I think he was extremely impressive. He had a couple big shots there late. So very impressed with how well he played. And I think Indiana's just going to be just fine. I mean, I kind of went the way I expected it to go. I knew Arizona probably had the best front court in the country. I think they definitely proven that now, dominating Indiana like they did. And I'll tell you what, they won the game by 14 points. It felt like the closest 14 points I've ever witnessed. Like, that game, even though it was about like 10 plus points most of that game, it was very exciting. And shout out to IU fans because they was loud there in Vegas.
Phil, thoughts on IU going forward? You kind of agree with us that they should still feel pretty happy about the performance and moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be somewhat happy with the performance. I've seen a lot of IU fans on Twitter and stuff saying that this was like a back and forth game, which I would argue it was not.
They never led.
I was going to say they didn't lead from like the 17-minute point in the first half. It got within 5 points just twice in the second half, for a total of like 45 seconds or something along those lines. So like Arizona had them at arm's length pretty much throughout. Now Indiana was without Hood-Schifino, which I understand, but I'm still sort of where I was with Indiana, that I think they're a second weekend, Sweet 16 team, but I don't necessarily think that they have the Final Four potential.
I think if Xavier Johnson plays well, they're Final Four caliber good.
Exactly.
If he doesn't play well, then I think they get bounced probably Sweet 16.
I completely agree with.
And I totally agree with that too. It's just like, can Xavier Johnson put together 6 straight good games?
Well, that's the question.
And I forget what team we talked about last week where I think it was Gonzaga, where we talked about, well, you get Timmy playing good, but the guards play bad. Or you get the guards playing good and the bigs play poorly. They can't get it all pieced together. This is like Indiana. If they're getting guys like Miller Kopp and Race Thompson and Tamar Bates playing well, but their big guys, Trace Jackson Davis, Xavier Johnson, aren't necessarily playing up to par. Or if they're playing well, the other guys aren't playing well. If they could figure out a way to get everybody on the same page, they're going to be lethal. I think they're going to be lethal.
Not only that, but to play devil's advocate on what Phil just said, Xavier Johnson pitted it together for 6 games straight. We thought the same thing about Remy Martin last year, and he definitely pitted it together 6 games straight, won Kansas a national title. If he isn't on that floor, if he isn't playing for Kansas in March, Kansas does not win the national championship. So I think it can be done. We'll see, though.
I think that's a good point. I would also argue that Kansas team around Remy Martin was superior to this Indiana team in basically every way, shape, and form. So I just think this Indiana team is like one piece away from being a true national title team. I think they're that one like wing who can just take a game over away. You know, if they had Brandon Miller this year, they're the favorite to win the national title. You know what I mean? But without a guy, and they don't even necessarily need a guy who's that level of wing scorer, but they just need somebody who can take the pressure a little bit scoring off of TJD so that they don't need Xavier Johnson to necessarily be that 15 to 20 point a game guy.
And Trace, if this gets to you, start shooting a few jump shots. I don't care if you make them. Make the defense have to think about that when they guard you. Help your team out.
And that's something that I like is such a great point is it doesn't matter even if you make like if you only shoot 25-30%, they still have to respect it at least a little bit. Like
go ahead, Phil, sorry.
I was just going to say they have to respect it as an option. Right now, anywhere outside of probably 12 to 15 feet, even that, he's not taking a shot.
He's wanting to get to the rim and more specifically to the left-hand side. And it's so predictable. And if you have bigs like Omar Ballo that can hold his own, he's going to be shut down. And I don't want to keep bringing this up, but look at Oscar Tshiebwe's development from West Virginia to last year and then to this season. You can't guard that dude one-on-one most games because if he gets it from 15, 16, 17 feet, he's pulling a jump shot and he's making them. Or he's going to punish at the rim. Trace we've begged for him all offseason when he's decided to come back to do the same thing. He's got to add that to his game, especially if he wants to play at the next level. But let's move on. How about Penny Hardaway, fellas? Memphis has won 6 in a row, including last night's victory against Auburn. The Memphis Tigers beat the Auburn Tigers 82-73. Kendrick mother freaking Davis, 27 points. Peyton, I know you love this dude. And he had 9 rebounds to boot. Kendrick Davis, star of the stars in this game. And on the flip side, Phil, your favorite backcourt in the country here, wink, wink, Wendell Green and KD Johnson, who actually came off the bench, combined for 7 of Auburn's 15 turnovers. So both sides of the coin here. How good has Memphis looked so far?
They looked extremely impressive. They started off the year with a big win going at Vanderbilt and pretty much beating them up for the entire game. And then they go in and beat a ranked team in Auburn. And I mentioned it as well last week. Auburn has not played anybody worthy. They played, I think they beat St. Louis. St. Louis is a good team, but that's really it. They haven't really played anybody, especially the level of defensive ability that Memphis has. Memphis can get out. They can guard people, man. Not only could they have Kendrick Davis and go get you 25 plus, which he did, and I'm super excited that the fact that he's out there balling because I knew he would be, hence why he was a top 10 player in our top 50 players in our ECB magazine. Kid can go out and get buckets. They also had Williams, 16 points, 11 rebounds. This Memphis team is sneaky good, and people need to be on the look for Memphis. I don't think they can they can overtake Houston to win the AAC this year, but I do think they're second now.
Hey, Phil, do you think Memphis is a second weekend team right now?
Oof, I don't know about second weekend. I definitely think they're a tournament team. It's so hard to say like this team is a second weekend team or whatever in the tournament because we have so much crazy shit happen too. I think that they absolutely could make it. I wouldn't bet on it. I do want to definitely say best wishes to Larry Brown. I know he just left the team because of some health issues. So hopefully everything is okay with him. But, Peyton, you put it perfectly. I don't think they can challenge Houston for the title in the AAC. I definitely think they can give Houston a good game or two in AAC play or in the AAC tournament. But I think that this Memphis team is clearly a tournament team with Kendrick Davis. They could probably beat just about anybody in the country. So wouldn't be completely shocked if they were a second weekend team, to answer your question, Josh, but would also not wager the house on it.
Well, what do you think about Auburn's struggles? First, I mean, Peyton mentioned it. They played St. Louis, which is a good St. Louis team, but this is their first real big-time D1 opponent, and they failed the test. The backcourt was not great in this game. I know Wendell Green, 14 points. KD Johnson, again, off the bench with 14, but the turnovers. Memphis did have more turnovers, but their backcourt for Auburn to win has to be special. Elsewise, they're not that great if the backcourt does not play spectacular.
Well, we mentioned it when we talked about Auburn last week, and I was talking about my favorite backcourt, as you called it.
That was tongue in cheek.
When they're good, they're really, really good, and when they're not, they're kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's a tale of two cities, if you will. But I'm not too worried about Auburn. Again, I'm not super high on them. I don't think they're a second weekend team. I think that's very safe to say, in my opinion. I think they're middle of the pack in the SEC, but I also don't think that this is a sign that they can't, go 500 in the SEC or still make the tournament. They still have Johnny Broome. Bruce Pearl's a good coach. He seems to get the most out of his guys. I expect Auburn will be around come tournament time, but like you guys mentioned, they just haven't played anybody. I mean, that game against Northwestern literally set the game of basketball back by 25 or 30 years.
Ugly. If you didn't know any better, you would think it's high school basketball in the state of Indiana with no shot clock, and you can just hold the ball.
In fairness to Auburn, is Northwestern maybe a little bit better than we thought they were at that time? Probably, coming off the Michigan State win and stuff, but still, I mean, 43-42 is absolutely brutal.
Unbelievable.
I think what you're going to see with this Auburn team is that they're going to have no problem with the teams in the bottom half of the conference, except for that occasional maybe slip up that they're going to be prone to. I'm not sure that they can compete with the Kentuckys, the Arkansas, even Florida, or somebody with a really good presence down low. Like I mentioned with Auburn, they have Broome, but other than that, there's not a lot of depth
and not a lot of size. Peyton, you were joking at the top of the show about Nate Oates in Alabama. If any team in the SEC might consider going the Grinnell way, that'd be Auburn. You got small guards. You might as well just chuck up a bunch of threes. That's how they made the Final Four that one year, just shooting the life out of the three ball. But Memphis, surely to God, tomorrow they're going to be in our top 25. I know full disclosure, I'm voting for them top 25.
Yeah, they're getting my vote, 100%.
Yeah, I would definitely expect them to be, well, obviously they're going to be receiving votes, but I would expect them to be probably not even just on the fringes, maybe 20th, 21st, somewhere like that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Probably anywhere between 20 and 23, I would think. But let's move on, Peyton. Supposed rivalry game here. The place was packed. Missouri was 9-0 heading into this game, and they had their big-time rival, the Kansas Jayhawks, coming into town. And my dumb ass picked them for the upset, and boy, I feel like an idiot now. Missouri had played up to this game one of the worst non-conference schedules in America, playing some really bad teams. So maybe the record was inflated a little bit. But Kansas just came in and do what they normally do to poor Missouri and just beat them down like a redheaded stepchild. 95-67. Jayhawks are probably, with the upsets in the top 5, probably back in the top 5 in our ECB top 25 tomorrow. 95-67. Let's hear it. Thoughts on this game?
This might be the best game Kansas has played since they beat Duke up in Indy. Kevin McCullough, 21 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. Jalen Wilson, 24 and 10. That's another double-double. I don't know how many double-doubles he's had this season. I'll check later today when I look at his stats. Right now, I think Zach Edey's the front runner to win National Player of the Year. Jalen Wilson might be second. I mean, he's definitely top 3 in my opinion. He's been balling here lately. He's definitely Kansas' best player. DeJuan Harris, 6 points, 9 assists. Had a couple steals as well. Still one of the best. In my opinion, still the best on-ball defender in the country. Grady Dick, he's still balling. He's still shooting the lights out. 16 points, 6 of 11 from the field, 3 of 5 from the three-point line. He's still shooting over 50% from 3, which is fucking ridiculous. Jordan Yesufu, he only had 4 points, but he actually played pretty decently. This wasn't a game.
Jalen Wilson's got 7 double-doubles.
7. This wasn't a game at all. Kansas jumped them early, and we kept on jumping them. And Missouri, they was 8-0, 9-0. It's easy to go 9-0 when you're playing teams like Lindenwood and SIUE and teams like that. But when those Jayhawks come to town, you didn't want to play them in football. You might want to stop playing them in basketball because the last 2 times we whooped your fucking ass.
Phil,
Impressive performance.
Missouri their last lead was 4-2 with 18:23 left to go in the first half. After that, Kansas took over and cruised.
Yeah, not much of a surprise. Also, not much of a rivalry when only one team ever really is competitive.
Yeah, is it a rivalry? I mean,
right? I mean, and I would say Missouri fans won't be happy to hear that, but I don't even know if there are Missouri basketball fans. So I don't even think that we'll get too much blowback from this, to be honest. No, the one bright spot for Missouri we do have to mention is Demoy Hodge, averaging 16.5 on the year, but went 4 for 9 from 3, was knocking down some shots, had 15 points. Really, basically the only guy that looked like he belonged on the court for the most part with Kansas. But Peyton mentioned it. Kansas just has like 4, 5, 6 guys that can all contribute at a high level. They might be looking in that conversation as a favorite to repeat as champions.
That's what it's looking like.
I think they do, and I'll put it like this. I think they have the best on-ball defender in the country, and DeJuan Harris. I think they got a top 3. I'd say he's the best. Brandon Miller's definitely up there. Either way, I think they're 1 and 2. A top 3 freshman in the country right now, and Grady Dick. I think Kevin McCullough is one of the best two-way players in the country. I think Jalen Wilson's a top 3 player in the country, and I think they got the best coach in the country. Once again, Bill Self. And you mentioned Missouri, the fact that they don't have any fans. You just love pissing off fan bases, don't you? Last week it was North Carolina. This week it was Missouri. Next week, hopefully, it'll be in Kentucky, and you'll get the trifecta there of people, fan bases I just don't like. But talking about Missouri, though, I mean, listen, the last 2 times they played Kansas, we beat the shit out of them. So, breaking news, Missouri is going to go to D2. That way they can stop playing Kansas in basketball.
In all fairness, it's going to take another year, maybe 2, if they give him that long. But I think Dennis Gates is the right guy for this job. I think he'll get him back in the tournament in the next couple of years. I do. If you watch him and his recruiting, I think he will get them there. But they're not going to beat Kansas anytime soon. Let's go to one of the top 5 best rivalries in college basketball. Was played yesterday in Cincinnati. Xavier 80, Cincinnati 77, highly entertaining game. Xavier goes out to a 41-24 lead early in the second half. Cincinnati rallies back. Crazy ending. Cincinnati is shooting free throws. Xavier is shooting free throws. They are up, 78-77 with like 1.5 left on the clock. It was a little time. I think it was like 1.5, we'll say, because I don't remember the exact time. And Sully Boom, Cincinnati has no timeouts remaining. Sully Boom purposely misses a free throw to set up because Cincinnati would have to take a full court heave at that case. He purposely misses the free throw. Cincinnati, without any timeouts, calls a timeout to get a technical to give Xavier 2 more free throws so they can take the ball out of bounds underneath and have a better chance at some kind of play design. Sully Boom then hits 2 more free throws to put the lead at 80-77. Cincinnati misses a full court heave. So thoughts on that final ending? Because I think it's great strategy from both teams. I think it's smart on Boom and Xavier to miss the free throws, knowing that Cincinnati would have to basically turn and heave it from 80 feet. But it's also smart on Cincinnati to call the timeout to give them 2 more free throws because you're still going to have to hit that 3 to try to have a better play design to try to get that game-tying field goal. Crazy ending for a great rivalry. So thoughts on that? Because that's something you don't see every day.
No, it felt like a damn chess match out there. One person will make a move, the other will be 2 steps ahead and make another move. It felt like a chess match out there. And Xavier, I think, we're talking about front courts. I think they have a top 10 front court in Jack Nunge and Zach Freemantle. I think those 2 guys were excellent in this game. Freemantle had 14 and 12. Jack Nunge had 18, 3 and 3. Both of them got shot pretty well from the field. As you mentioned, Boom, he led the team in scoring, 21 points. He had 6 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 of 4 from the three-point line. This Xavier team, they almost beat Gonzaga in, what tournament was that? It was the PKI.
Yeah,
they almost beat Gonzaga in, what was it?
The PK85.
PK85, not PKI. I don't know what the hell is that PKI. They almost beat Gonzaga, upset them. They almost beat Indiana at home in a hell of a game. But they got a big rivalry win, and it's definitely, in my opinion, a top 5 rivalry. I don't know how you can argue that.
Hey, Phil, after what we've seen through 10 games from Xavier and Sean Miller's ball club, is it safe to say that Xavier, with the collapse of Villanova early in this year, I think UConn is now the favorite in the Big East and probably Creighton. Do you think Xavier finishes the Big East this year top 3?
Yeah, I think that's definitely within the realm of possibility. I mean, it's hard to judge St. John's too much because they've played I think their schedule's ranked under 350 in the nation on KenPom. They literally won by 14 points yesterday and went down in their KenPom ranking. So I think St. John's is potentially right there with them, but it's hard to say because, again, they have not played any competition. And I think Xavier could compete with Creighton for second, especially if Ryan Kalkbrenner keeps getting quote-unquote sick.
Yeah, I think this rivalry, this is one of those games I want to get to one day because it is always close. It seems like it's a good game. It's brutal fan bases between each other. Fight. I mean, there wasn't a fight yesterday, but there's usually fights and mayhem. And we got to mention that the Indiana transfer, Rob Phinisee, did not play for Cincinnati, so that could have swung the pendulum in their favor in this game. Cincinnati's 6-4. They're not going to beat Houston in the AAC, but I would love if the Cincinnati team could make the NCAA tournament. Landers Nolly from Memphis is there. He only had 9 yesterday. David DeJulius is a tremendous senior player for them. And then Rob Phinisee and company. I'd love if the Cincinnati Bearcats team could rally together and make the NCAA tournament.
I think they got the talent. I think they definitely can. I was pretty high on them when I was doing the AAC predictions for our magazine, and I still think they can potentially be a tournament team. You guys mentioned Creighton. They lost again last night. They got beat by BYU, 83-80. They're 6-4. At one point, they was a top 10 team in the country.
I think they're going to fall out of our top 25.
They are. I'm not putting them in the top 25 at all. So, what's your opinion on Creighton?
Phil, I'll let you take because I've got I want to hear yours first, real quick.
I wasn't as high on Creighton as you guys were. I wasn't in the Tony Patelis range of just way low on Creighton. I saw him as a 10th to 15th ranked team, but Baylor Shireman hasn't been consistently scoring the way we thought he would. Obviously, not having Kalkbrenner for this game hurts them a ton. He's a huge factor when he's in there for them, and when he's not, their rebounding just really suffered yesterday against BYU. BYU fucking killed them on the boards. But I still think that talent-wise, between Ryan Nembhard and Arthur Kaluma, they'll obviously have Kalkbrenner back. I still think they're a really, really high-end team. It's just about, can they avoid those hiccups once they get into Big East play too? I mean, you mentioned Villanova kind of, being out of it now, but they've looked a lot better since Cam Whitmore came back too. So I don't necessarily think that that's a gimme win in Big East play. Other than Georgetown and maybe DePaul, I think anybody in the Big East can kind of knock each other off. So it'll be interesting to see once we get into conference play for sure.
Well, staying in the Big, and real quick, before we make this transition, you mentioned Shireman. I think he's trying to be too passive. I think he's trying to integrate too much because, I think he's still averaging 9 or 10 shots a game, but he became a star because he was firing the ball. And part of it is because he had to. But if you watch him play, he's just passive until late in the game and they need him. Then he hits shots from the logo. I'd like to see him be more assertive and more aggressive early in games to get his shots because I think he's trying to pass the ball too much. But staying in the Big East, by far the best team in the Big East and maybe in the country right now is Connecticut. 11-0. They blew out Florida on the road Wednesday night. They dominated LIU yesterday, putting 114 up on them. This team is top 10 in both offense and defense. They are beating teams by an average of at least 20 points every game. Connecticut looks like the real deal Holyfield. They're shooting 37.6% from three. They're 58% from two. This team has everything you need. They are big. They've got guards. They defend. Adama Sanogo looks like an All-American. The freshman Donovan Clingan looks tremendous. Tristan Newton, Jordan Hawkins, Joey Calcaterra, Alex Caravan. This team is deep, loaded, big, everything that you need. So what I'm going to ask, it's a two-part question. Do you think Connecticut's going to be the number one team in the country in the ECB Top 25 tomorrow? And does this team look like the team that can win a national title?
I think they can win the national title. I definitely think they can get to the Final Four. Your question about will they be number one on ECB poll, I don't see them overlapping Virginia and Purdue. I think Connecticut is a really good team. I think Tristan Newton has been definitely a difference maker from last year's squad to this year's squad. He had 2 points, 2 rebounds. Those 2 points came from free throws, didn't hit a single shot, but he dropped 7 dimes. UConn's backcourt in this the last game had 14 assists from Newton and Jackson. I think that's very important for this team. Clingan came off the bench, had 21. I think they got a lot of depth. They can defend. They can put up numbers. And I definitely think now they're the best team in the Big East without a doubt. So your question about them winning a national championship, I think they can do it. Will they be number one in our poll? They're not getting my vote.
Yeah, I agree with Peyton on both of those fronts. You mentioned how dominant they've been. All 11 of their wins by double figures, just 4 top 50 wins, 5 wins in the top 55 versus KenPom rated teams. Beat Alabama by 15 points. I mean, they've just been absolutely stomping people out. It's time to talk about Adama Sanogo as player of the year candidate. I mean, my guy's averaging 18 points a game, 6.6 rebounds, shooting 62% from the field, 35% from three. 36% from three. Just absolute monster. They're definitely right in that conversation for me. I mentioned, is Kansas the favorite for the national title? I think right now there's probably 8 or 9 teams that you could say could win it, but I think that UConn, Kansas, Purdue, and Virginia would be right there as all my 4 favorites right now.
And I would still throw Arizona in there. I would still throw Texas despite the loss. Outside teams, I would still, if they put it together, I'd still throw Kentucky in there. I would throw a team like Tennessee in there if they can continue to put it together. But I'm with you. I think the tier 1 teams are Connecticut, Kansas, Virginia, Purdue, and then kind of tier 2 are like Arizona and them.
Yeah, and I misspoke a little bit. I would throw Houston in my tier 1 as well.
Houston, yes. How could we forget them? How could we forget them?
No, I definitely, like I said, I'm not too worried about Houston. I still think they're right there with anybody with that backcourt. And then with Drace Walker, he's been fucking phenomenal this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the games this week because, fellas, it's another loaded week. I'm talking loaded, which is great for us. But before we do that, real quick, team of the week, mid-major team of the week. Team of the week this week, we went with the Memphis Tigers. We mentioned it. They've won 6 in a row. Big win against Auburn. Penny Hardaway's got his team going. And the most important thing, there's not a lot of controversy around Memphis. It seems like the last couple of years, there's always been some bullshit going on. Memphis kind of flying under the radar. I don't think that's been talked about enough. And Phil, mid-major team of the week, I think it's only apropos after the big win against Murray State, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had him as a guest on the show earlier, and then you mentioned the big win they had earlier. Got to go with Bellarmine. Scott Davenport's team, 5-6, but we mentioned they've played the 5th toughest schedule in the entire nation right now. He mentioned it, a brutal 9-day stretch with trips to Duke, UCLA, and Kentucky. So you can't fault him too much for the record. That Murray State win yesterday, Murray State was ranked, over 100 rankings ahead of them in KenPom. Murray State was 122nd, and they were 244th, so kind of a big upset too.
And with the pedigree Murray State's had the last 10 years or so. That's a big win. That's a real big win. Let's I introduced it last week. This date in history in college basketball, 2 games from the 2004 season played on the same day. We'll go back to December 11th, 2004. Number 11 Kentucky beats Indiana. At that time, it was their 5th straight win over the Indiana Hoosiers. Patrick Sparks, which one of my favorite players at Kentucky all time, 16 points. The freshman in Indiana, big-time player, only stayed there a year or two. Bracy Wright had 31 in this game. Kentucky continued their dominance over Indiana. And on the same day, December 11, 2004, number 1 Illinois, that magical year. We covered them back in the offseason when we did a watch-along. Number 1 Illinois beats Oregon 83-66. Luther had 23 points. Darren Williams, 17 points. This date in college basketball history. You fellas got anything on those two games before we move on?
Just, that Illinois team is the greatest team in the history of all of basketball. Yeah, so that's all I got, though.
What year was this again?
2004.
Motherfucker, I was like 5 years old.
Yep.
I don't remember shit from this game.
I didn't know if you had a thought on it. Damn.
I mean, no, I don't have anything. I mean, maybe I'll go watch some highlights back from both of those games. Maybe I can figure it out.
We'll skip you then since you're lame here.
Yeah.
Big week ahead in college basketball. Starting on Wednesday night, we have and keep in mind, these are the ECB rankings. We're using our poll numbers here because I think they're better than the AP, to be honest. Number 18, UCLA at number 12, Maryland. We know how good Maryland's been. We've talked about them. We know how good UCLA can be. So let's hear your thoughts and predictions on UCLA at Maryland. Big time road game for the Bruins.
The fact that it's at Maryland makes me even more comfortable that Maryland's going to win this game by 8 points or more. I have not been impressed with the way UCLA has started this year. Jaime Jaquez Jr. he's been good. Tyler Campbell had some decent games, especially in the main event tournament. I mean, he had a decent game against Baylor in their second game there. But the play of Amari Bailey, he still hasn't shown that he's a 5-star freshman. And if he doesn't show it anytime soon, especially in this game, then I don't see how it gets any better for UCLA going forward, especially when they head into Pac-12 play. I don't see them contending or stopping Arizona from winning the Pac-12 this year if he doesn't start getting his shit together. So I think Maryland wins this game 82-74.
Phil?
Yeah, I think surprisingly enough, I just like the pieces that Maryland has more at this point in the season of guys who have established that they can produce at the college level. I think they have, 4, 5, 6 of those guys, whereas, Peyton mentioned, we have not seen that Amari Bailey can consistently produce at this level. So I like Maryland, especially because it's at home. I like them 72-68.
This is a big week for UCLA. They've got Maryland on Wednesday, and then they go to Madison Square Garden against Kentucky on Saturday, which we're going to preview in a minute. Man, they dropped both of these. They're out of the top 25. So I'm wanting to take UCLA, but I'm with you guys. I just don't think Maryland loses at home. You know that building's going to be rocking. I wouldn't be surprised if Scott Van Pelt's not going to be there front court. There's something about this Maryland team that feels special. I know they lost earlier in the week to, at Wisconsin, I think is where it was at. But that's on the road at Wisconsin. So I'm going Maryland. I'm with you guys. I think this could be an ugly game at periods of times where we have 5-minute scoring droughts, stuff like that. So I'm going to go a low-scoring game. I think Maryland wins this game 66-61. I like the home court advantage, and I like Maryland. Saturday, we've got so many good games on Saturday. This might be the best week of college basketball we get all season long, not just early year. Might be the best all year long. Number 15, Indiana, at number 6, Kansas. Saturday in Allen Fieldhouse. Indiana, Kansas. Phil, I'm going to let you take this one first.
Keep it short and sweet. I think Kansas is a much better team than Indiana. I think they're a tier apart. Kansas is among the great teams. Indiana is just a good team, and I think you're going to see it, in this game. And I think Kansas wins 82-70.
Peyton?
My team, I go less.
All right. So Kansas has only lost. We've seen them against Tennessee. Big physical team that defends their ass off. What's Indiana? Big physical team that defends their ass off. I know it's an Allen Fieldhouse, but I've said it for months, and I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to ride through with it. I think Indiana doesn't lose this game. I think that they will defend. Kansas, the one thing we know about them, they don't have a whole lot of size, and they don't have a Omar Ballo that can physically manhandled Trace Jackson Davis. I think TJD eats in this game. I think Indiana, as long as their role players like a Miller Kopp and Race Thompson continue to shoot the ball well, and surely to God they get Jalen Hood-Schifino back, Indiana goes into Kansas and win this game on the backboard and in points in the paint like they did against North Carolina. I like Indiana winning this game 81-78. Sorry about you.
Well, one thing I do know covering college basketball for the past 5 years, that Indiana is no Kentucky, okay? So they're walking into Allen Fieldhouse in the toughest environment in the country. Bar none, don't try to argue me. I know Auburn has a great environment. I know Texas has shown, especially this year in the Moody Center, that they got a great environment. It doesn't fucking compare to Allen Fieldhouse and Fog Allen. No question about it. So that's number one. Number two, do any of you guys have any white tape laying around? You got any white tape? Because there's going to be a crime scene in Allen Fieldhouse, and this time it's not going to involve Xavier Johnson. Okay? Kansas gets the job done. I mentioned earlier, we got the best on-ball defender in the country, DeJuan Harris. Who is he going to be mainly guarding? Xavier Johnson, who has been inconsistent to start the year. He's had some good games. Last couple losses against Rutgers and Arizona, he's been bad. So he's going to get shut out. He's going to have a couple turnovers. Grady Dick has shot the lights out, shooting over 50% from three. I don't give a shit about the front court because guard play wins games morally. And our guard play, I think, is fantastic right now. Kansas wins 79-67.
Yeah, except for when he played a big physical team like Tennessee that shut his ass down.
Yeah, Indiana's not a big physical team. It's Trace Jackson Davis. It's Trace Jackson Davis. That's fucking it. Look what just happened to Arizona. Arizona is a physical front court heavy team. Indiana, their front court, if you want to talk about, you're telling me Trace Jackson Davis is as physical as Armar Barlow?
But
really?
you're telling me that KJ Adams is as good and or physical? You're telling me that he's smart enough to keep freaking TJD from getting to his left hand?
No, I don't think that. I think TJD has a good game. I think he may have a double-double. But who else is going to show up? Who?
That's what I'm saying.
And I don't care if Hood-Schifino plays or not. He's not going to be the difference maker in this game whatsoever.
You don't think he's going to be a difference maker?
If Hood-Schifino played against Arizona, does Arizona still win that game?
I think Arizona still wins, but I think it's a hell of a lot better than what it was.
Who do you think's a better team, Arizona or Kansas?
I think Arizona's better than Kansas right now. I think if you stacked them up because of Arizona's size and the way they score the basketball, I don't think it. Listen, I think Kansas is a really, really, really good team. But I don't think that they can match up with certain teams in the country, Arizona being one of them. And I don't think Indiana obviously is as good as Arizona, but I think Kansas has shown against defensive teams that they have struggled. Tennessee and Indiana are kind of the same mold right now. We've seen what Tennessee did against Kansas. I know it's at Allen Fieldhouse, so I will not be shocked if Kansas wins this and wins this comfortably. But I'm telling you, I think Indiana's defense will bother Kansas.
Who has a better front court? Not front court. Who has a better backcourt, Tennessee or Indiana?
Tennessee. Well, I don't know.
To start the year off, we said Tennessee had a top 5 backcourt.
I think Tennessee does.
I take Zakai Ziegler and company over Xavier Johnson, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Tamar Bates, like whoever. Like I think them. I think Kansas is backcourt over Indiana. That's going to be the difference maker. Is who the backcourt.
We're talking about one game, not over the course of a season. We're talking about one game, and we've seen that this Indiana team will not go away. You will not blow them out, and unless Kansas runs a 1-3-1 zone against them, which I don't think they will. I think Indiana is going to be in this game the whole way, and if it's close, Kansas gets tight because it's on them. The pressure's on them to hold home court.
Okay, 2 things I'll say about that, and I'm loving this, by the way, and I can't wait to listen to this back, because I love when we go back and forth, because it's a lot of fun. Normally, I'm talking shit to Corey, but since he's not fucking man enough to show up this week, I guess I'll talk to you. 2 things I gotta say about that. You mentioned the home court advantage. You mentioned it being one game and not the whole season. There's not a lot of coaches out there that I trust in a one-game scenario to get a job done, especially on their home court, than Bill Self. Bill Self's the best coach in the fucking country. No debate whatsoever. He's the best. And you telling me him be on the sideline just from out of bounds plays or coming out of timeouts, that's 10 points alone coming out of timeouts. There's nobody better than him coming out of timeout getting any bucket he wants to get. And, you know, it is what it is. Kansas is winning this fucking game.
Well, that's fine. I'll take Indiana's defense, and you can take Kansas at home. Let's move on. Number 8, Alabama, coming off the big win against number 20, Gonzaga. It's in Birmingham for some reason, and Gonzaga is listed as the home team, which is odd. Phil, Alabama's had a history of beating Gonzaga the last couple of years, and we've seen them knock off top teams already, and it's in their home state despite being listed as the road team. Question is, does Alabama get another top-tier quad one win, or does Gonzaga find a way to get a big win themselves?
I mean, I'll tell you what, if Gonzaga doesn't find a way to get a win in this game, they're in serious trouble. I mean, obviously they're not in trouble of missing the tournament, but they are not going to be a top probably 3 or 4 seed like we're accustomed to seeing them the past 10 years or so. I think for that reason, Gonzaga's just got a little more urgency in this game, and they find a way. I think they find a way to get it done in a very tight game. Drew Timme has a big performance, and Gonzaga 84-78.
Yeah, I like this matchup. I'm riding with the Crimson Tide. There's something about this team against big teams that they step up, and they'll maybe have the best player on the floor. I don't know. It depends on how Timme shows up, but again, I don't trust Gonzaga's backcourt, and Alabama's built for games like this. I like the Crimson Tide taking another big-time win. I like Alabama in this game. High scoring. I'm talking real high scoring. I think Alabama wins 92-89.
Yeah, this is tough for me, especially coming off that Houston game. The fact that they still won 71-65 and their best player didn't hit a fucking shot. I mean, that says something a lot about this Alabama squad and how good they are. But I think I'm going to agree with Phil. Gonzaga needs this win way more than Alabama needs this win. Gonzaga wins this game. Like you said, Josh, a high scoring. I think 85-81.
Let's go to probably the game of the week here. Currently number 1 Houston at number 4 Virginia. They might flip-flop in the rankings here. It's at Virginia. This is going to be an ugly defensive slugfest. I think we all can agree on that. Both teams hang their hat on defense. But I'm going Houston to bounce back. I know it's at Virginia, but I'm going Houston to bounce back. Low-scoring game. I think Houston wins. First one to 60, so I'm going to say Houston wins 62-57.
I wish this game was on. Well, actually, I don't wish this game. I'm glad this game is at Virginia and not at like a neutral side, because that would make this game a hell of a lot tougher for me to predict. The fact that it's at Virginia, I think Virginia holds home court. Been loving the play of Armand Franklin. I think he's been the difference maker for this Virginia squad. Kind of is the glue guy for them. Does everything. He gets rebounds. He defends. He hits shots. He hustles down the floor each and every play. He just gives. He's just that effort guy that Virginia has lacked in the last couple of years. And defensively, I think they're a top 30 team in KenPom for defensive efficiency. I don't have the numbers with me right now. I think the offense has been a lot better than it was last year. Virginia wins this, low scoring, 69-65.
Yeah, I'm with you guys on it being a rock fight, but I think Houston bounces back here. Everything that I like about Virginia, I like about Houston just a little bit more. And I think it's even uglier than you guys have said, though. I think it's like a 54-50 type win for Houston. And you get a nice performance out of Terrence Arsenault, and Marcus Sasser makes the difference.
Up in Madison Square Garden on Saturday, we got the CBS Sports Classic, UNC versus Ohio State. Phil, I'll let you take first volley here because you've covered both of these teams. RJ Davis finally had a nice performance yesterday. I think he had 21 points, something like that. So UNC, Ohio State.
I think UNC, again, like I said about Gonzaga, I think UNC really needs this win. And I said Gonzaga wasn't in, danger of missing the tournament if they didn't win, but UNC is getting to the point where if they don't put together some wins in non-conference play, the ACC is a lot better this year than it was last year. It's not going to be a run through for them. So think UNC needs this one bad, but I just think Ohio State's a really solid team. I really like Ohio State, and I think they take this one. They're just a little too physical at the guard position for UNC, able to throw RJ Davis and Caleb Love off, and Ohio State takes a kind of ugly one, 68-64.
Yeah, I'm going to go because North Carolina needs this win, and if RJ Davis plays well, I will go North Carolina winning this game because they desperately need this. I will go 71-64 North Carolina in this game.
I'm going to agree with Phil once again. I think Ohio State gets the job done. Their guards are just playing a lot better than especially Caleb Love. I mean, I think Caleb Love has not been good to start the year off at all. So I think Ohio State gets the job done, knocks off North Carolina 77-70.
The other CBS Sports Classic game up in Madison Square Garden, we got number 18 UCLA playing number 16 Kentucky. Peyton.
Shoot. Ugh. Well, there's no question that Kentucky's front court's a lot better than besides Tommy Hawkins Jr., it's a lot better than UCLA. I mean, UCLA's not going to have anybody to guard Oscar Tshiebwe. He's going to go for about 17 and 15 probably in this game, I'd imagine, maybe even more. So I don't think they're going to be able to stop him. The question of Kentucky is, are they going to hit shots? Is C.J. Frederick finally going to show up in a big-time game? It's Cason Wallace. I know he was very impressive in that Michigan win down there in London. Can he do it again when he has to face against an equally as good as defender as Tiger Campbell is? I think this is a game that UCLA needs to win. They need to get a big win because they went 0-2 down there in Vegas for the main event tournament. And I mentioned earlier, I think they're going to lose as well. And the other game that we talked about, I think they get the job done. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think it's going to be in the low 70s, high 60s. 70-66. UCLA, the Bruins, get it done.
Phil?
Yeah, Peyton mentioned the huge advantage in the front court and just physically for Oscar. I don't think it really matters if Kentucky hits shots in this game because I think Oscar is going to have, one of those Zach Edey-like performances from the other night and go for like 30 and 20, just an absolute monster game. And Kentucky dominates this game from start to finish. I like the Wildcats big in this one, 88-65.
Homer alert here, sound the alarms, because last time we had them on a game, I picked Gonzaga to win, and I'm going with Kentucky in this one. Offensive woes are still there. They'll probably be there most of the year. But I do like what I'm seeing out of Cason Wallace. He's proven that he is a jump shooter now, which we didn't think coming in. Oscar Tshiebwe is going to do Oscar things, but I love what we're starting to see out of Ugonna Kingsley Onyesu. We need more out of Jacob Toppin. We need more out of our shooters and Frederick and Reeves. We need Sahvir Wheeler to be smart and heady in this game. But I like Kentucky. I'm with Phil. I think Kentucky pulls and gaps them late. I do think we'll hit enough shots. 6 or 7 threes will be enough to win this game. And I think Kentucky wins. I don't trust UCLA right now. So I'm going about the same scoreline as Phil. I'm going to go 81-65 in this game just because I think they gap them late. And then the last one, we mentioned Houston, Virginia probably game of the week. This would be a close second. Number 10, Tennessee at number 7, Arizona. Whoo! Hose me down, baby, because this is a good one. I'll let whoever start first. I don't care.
Phil, go ahead.
Yeah. Arizona has the best front court in the country, like we already mentioned. I think that, Tennessee is a good team. Again, I just think they're a tier below Arizona in this one. And I think Arizona maybe is our team of the week next week after a huge win over Tennessee as well, 90-75.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to go. Listen, if this game was in Tennessee or a neutral site, I would favor Tennessee. But it's in Tucson, and them crowd, if you've seen them at Las Vegas last night, Arizona crowd is insane. Insane. So I think that's a 5-point boost right there. And then you factor in Arizona's defense, their size, and their offensive ability. Love this Tennessee team, and I think that they can do some stuff that Indiana could not do to Arizona. But I think Arizona gaps this one late, similar to the Kentucky-UCLA game. I do like Arizona to win this game. High scoring again. I think that they win 92-79.
Jesus. Well, I'll tell you what, Tennessee has a big week because today they play a top 15 team in Maryland at 4:30, so they got another big one today. I don't see them losing because I think they'd lose to, especially since it's at Maryland, I think if they lose to Maryland, and I think they beat Arizona. I think it's going to be 75-71. The difference maker is I think Tennessee is going to open them up and going to hit shots, and I think Zakai Ziegler is going to have a good game.
All right, let's start rounding this show out. We went a little longer today because of Coach Davenport's gracious time. He gave us way more than we thought, so we are thankful for that. A little longer show, but we'll start wrapping it up. Let's go to the bank on it. Peyton, pull that beautiful graphic up for the people to see. Currently, I am 2-3 on bank on it. Dropped one last week. Oh, where'd it go? Where'd the graphic go, Peyton? Peyton's 2-4. Phil's finally on the board. So, Phil, you got a win last week. I'll let you take it to go 2 weeks in a row.
Oh,
Phil?
I was on mute there, guys. I got to try to start like doubling up and shit just to, get back to 500 here. So we're going to go with a double up. Terrence Arsenault and Marcus Sasser both go for 15 plus in the Virginia game. Bank on it.
Ooh, I like that.
That's
Peyton.
interesting. Well, I did 2 bank on it. I doubled up last week, did 2 bank on it. I got one of them right, one of them not right. I banked on Illinois beating Texas. Thank you, Phil. Your boys pulled out a victory for me, got me a bank on it, and then Xavier Johnson, I banked on him having 4 turnovers or more, and he only had 2. So I ended up going 1-1 last week. But this week, I'm going to the Kansas-Indiana game. DeJuan Harris has 5 steals or more in this game. Bank on it.
I like the player pick parlays here. I like that.
Yeah, it's fine. Do something different. Normally I do teams, but let's do something different this week.
Well, you want something different? I'll go our not a pal. He blocked me on Twitter, so fuck him. Mr. Swerve, bro. Mr. Vince Russo, because I'm swerving on you from that last game. Baby, I'm going an SEC parlay on Saturday. SEC sweep Saturday. Kentucky, Alabama, and Tennessee all get big wins on Saturday. The SEC shows its dominance that it is the best conference in college basketball. Bank on it. Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama win their 3 big-time games on Saturday. SEC.
Well, last time you fucking banked on 3 teams coming up with a victory. 2 of the teams end up winning, and unfortunately your team was the only team that fucking lost. So maybe it'll double down happen again. I don't know. We'll see. I like it.
Let's round out with shout-outs here, and I'll go first on mine real quick. Donovan Clingan, the freshman, we alluded to him from Connecticut, 7'2". He looks like a monster. Like, I don't think he's better than Zach Edey. But I've seen some Connecticut fans get hype and say that he's the best 7'2" guy in college basketball, which I don't buy right now. But he is producing at a level I don't know if any of us, even the diehard Connecticut fans, I don't think they could have predicted that he would be this good this early. So Donovan Clingan, phenomenal. Shout out. Phil, how about your baby Blue Devils? I'm just going to shout out the whole team, man, because they are getting better game by game. They are figuring it out. They started 5 freshmen yesterday for the first time, and the baby Blue Devils are looking like a team that is slowly crawling their way to being a top team in the country. So shout out to the baby Blue Devils. And then I'd be remiss. Shout out to the Bellarmine Knights. Big win over Murray State. We just had Coach Davenport on with us, talked a little bit about it. That is a bigger win in not only the state of Kentucky, but around college basketball, given what Murray State has been the last decade or so. They have a good team. Bellarmine with a big win. So those are my 3 shout outs.
I got 3 shout-outs as well. Shout out to St. Mary's for knocking off a top 25 team in San Diego State. This was a game on our pick'ems, and I did predict this upset was going to happen. They knocked off San Diego State 68-61. So shout out to them for a big upset. Next shout out goes to Matt Painter and Purdue. they might be the new number one team in the country. Like I said, I don't expect them to overlap. I think maybe Virginia might be number one. We'll see, though. But even if they are number one, this is 2 years straight that he's gotten his team to the number one team in the country. We mentioned him earlier when we talked to Scott Davenport about how good of a coach that Matt Painter is, and he's definitely is a top 5, top 10 coach in the country. So shout out to him. He's done incredible things at Purdue, and it's only going to keep getting better. Next shout out goes to Missouri. Why, you ask? Well, I'll tell you what, they played a little bit better than what they did last year. Last year, Kansas whooped them 102-65. This year, Kansas whooped them again, but it was only 95-67. So they scored 2 more points and gave up 7 points less. So at least they made it a tiny bit more competitive than what it was last year.
Baby. They're getting better.
Maybe 20 years from now, maybe it'll be about a 15-point deficit or something. We'll see. So shout out to them. And that's it. That's all I got.
All right, I just got 2 this week. Josh, you mentioned the baby Blue Devils. I have one in specific. Dariq Whitehead had his career high last night, 15 points. Just looked more confident than he had with his shot. They needed somebody to step up with Jeremy Roach out, and he was definitely more aggressive offensively. Was only 6 for 14, so still not a great shooting night. But again, you could just see the confidence, expecting his season to sort of take off from this point. And then my second shout out is Jalen Pickett for Penn State. Just an unbelievable game yesterday against Illinois. Me and you have talked about him throughout the year, Josh.
He's
but
so good.
Played all 40 minutes in this one. 20 points, 6 assists, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, a block, 9 for 17 from the field. I mean, the guy just does a little bit of everything. 6'4", he's an ideal kind of NBA type guard as well. I think he's going to start getting a lot of that type of love. But Jalen Pickett, definitely a contender for first team Big Ten this year, if not player of the year.
I was getting ready to say, man, he looks like an All-American. He's had a triple-double this year. He's putting up big numbers. And like you said, he does a little bit of everything. He is a phenomenal kid to watch right now. He's so good.
Yeah, I think Penn State is, a lot better. You had mentioned it earlier in the episode when we were talking about that Illinois game, but Penn State's better than we expected. So brief shout out to Micah Shrewsbury, who's doing a great job at Penn State.
Yeah, I think they get in the tournament this year, the way they shoot the ball.
I mean, we'll see how Big Ten teams start beating up on each other once conference play starts, but I certainly think it's a possibility.
I think they get in.
Real quick, Josh, I don't know if you mentioned them. You might have. I was looking at some other stuff. But shout out to Hansel Emmanuel from Northwestern State. They had a big win. They beat the shit out of UL Monroe a couple days ago, and he got his first bucket. He got his first collegiate points with a layup, and then he got a monstrous dunk after a missed free throw. If you guys don't know who he is, he was a sensation coming out of high school who has one arm, and it's only his right arm. And he's a fantastic player. He's a crazy athlete. He has a crazy athleticism, and so shout out to him for getting his first collegiate points and having a monstrous dunk.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. You talking about inspirational stories, man. Dude with one arm and he doesn't let it slow him down, and he's athletic as hell, and I'm so happy he's getting to experience the D1 level because, man, I couldn't imagine playing with one arm, and to do it at that level, what an inspirational story. Like, you got to feel good for a kid like that. And he's got big-time NIL deals, too, already, based off of his popularity. So, yeah, good story, man. Good shout-out. Great episode 125. Again, we went longer today. We had no idea Coach Davenport was going to give us that much time. We thought maybe 15 minutes. We ended up going like 35 with him. So, tremendous episode. I hope you guys enjoy this. Cannot wait to get to meet Coach Davenport in person here in a few weeks. Have him back on the show, hopefully, and kind of build that relationship with him. Phenomenal guest. I could talk to the dude for hours, listen to him tell stories, and just tremendous. But guys, wrapping up episode 125 for the Everything College Basketball Podcast. You can find us on Spotify. If you haven't already, leave us a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Music or wherever you download the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at ECB Podcast 10. And just keeping track with everything we got going on. We got the weekly pick'ems. We got all sorts of good stuff. We're in the heart of college basketball season. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And we'll look forward to reviewing the big-time week ahead in college basketball next week on episode 126. Until then, hope you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we will catch you down the road.